All right, so we left off on chapter 4, and Oscar just lost all of his luggage. So let's find out what happens. 30 minutes later at 9 p.m., Illinois Central Train Depot. Those street kids are vicious, the policeman said. He looked down at Oscar. Son, you're lucky you didn't get stabbed. Mama, Mr. Morrow, and Oscar stood with the policeman on the spot where their suitcases had been. The cop, Officer Brennan, was an old buddy of Mr. Morrow's. He explained that Oscar had been tricked. That little girl really wasn't lost. She was a crook, part of a band of thieves. She distracted you so the others could steal your suitcases, Officer Brennan said. Happens here every day. Officer Brennan and the three other cops had already scoured the station, but there was no sign of the girl or the bags or those rough boys Oscar had seen. Oscar told the policeman about them too, including the red-headed boy with the strange eyes. Otis Weber, the cop said, his friendly eyes narrowing. He's only 14 years old, but he's got the heart of a killer. We hear he works for an older guy. They take helpless orphans and turn them into ruthless criminals. Oscar shuddered. Will you find our suitcases? Mamma said. Doubtful, ma'am, he said, giving them all an apologetic smile before he left. Mr. Morrow put his arms around Oscar's shoulders. I should have warned you, he said. In a big city like this, there are some bad characters. What's done is done, Mamma said, shaking the worry from her face. We can all get new clothes. What matters is we're here together. Mr. Morrow beamed at Mamma. Oscar ducked out from under Mr. Morrow's arm. Oscar didn't care about his clothes. All he cared about was his papa's badge, which was gone forever. It was past 10 p.m. when they finally got out of the station and into the cab. A beat-up buggy pulled by a dusty horse. The cab driver flashed a smile, filled with black teeth, when he saw Mr. Morrow. Charlie, he cried. Welcome back. This was there anyone in Chicago who didn't know Mr. Morrow? Hello, Joseph, Mr. Morrow said, patting the man on the shoulder. Take us to the Palmer house, please. Joseph let out a sharp whistle. Fancy. Well, we'll have supper there, Mr. Morrow said. Mamma and Oscar had said to Mamma and Oscar. Then we'll head home. Oscar, I think you're going to like the house. My father built it. It's a little far away from things, north of our new park. The best room is my studio. You can look out the windows and see all of Chicago. Oscar managed to nod and bit his tongue. Mr. Morrow's house would never be home. Home was Papa's farm, where the air didn't smell like dead hogs, where the only thieves were the rabbits that stole the carrots from the garden. The horse clattered away from the train tracks and warehouses and onto a wide avenue of grand buildings. Oscar tried not to act like he was impressed, but the buildings were taller than any tree he'd ever climbed. Amazing, isn't it? Mr. Morrow said, smiling proudly. When I was born, the city was just a little town on a marsh. Today, Chicago is one of the most important cities in the world. It's beautiful, Mamma said, but suddenly Mamma's expression darkened. Does the sky look odd to you? She asked, her brow wrinkling with worry. Oscar saw it too, a pale orange glow in the sky. Must be a fire, Joseph said matter-of-factly. We're having fires practically every night now. Hasn't rained here in months. The city is bone dry. The word fire sent a flash of fear across Mamma's face, and it jolted Oscar too. 3 years ago, a massive forest fire had erupted in the woods north of Castle. It burned thousands of acres of pine and birch trees and then raced across the prairies toward Castle. Dozens of buildings were burned, including Oscar's barn. The entire town could have been lost, but just as the flames were lapping at the edge of Main Street, a big rainstorm blew in and doused the fire. Don't worry, Mr. Morrow said, giving Mamma a reassuring pat. Chicago has one of the best fire departments in the country. We have close to 200 firemen and a fleet of the best new steam pumpers. That fire will be out before we finish supper. The cab lurched to a stop and Joseph turned around. And here we are, folks. Palmer House Hotel, finest in the city. They climbed out of the cab, and a man in a top hat swung open the hotel's huge front door. Oscar peered inside at the glittering lobby. Bright lights twinkled, the piano music filled the air. Oscar lingered outside. He'd never seen such a fancy place, and he was sure he didn't belong in there. Oscar glanced back at the street, tempted to bolt away to the train station. And that's when he saw her, a little girl, scurrying down the sidewalk. Even in the flickering gaslight, there was no mistaking that dirty yellow cap, those raggedy braids. There she is! Oscar called out. But Mama and Mr. Morrow were already starting across the lobby, and Oscar's shouts were drowned out by the music and the hum of the chattering crowd. The girl moved quickly across the sidewalk, and before he even realized what he was doing, Oscar had dashed into the street. He had to catch that little thief. And that's the end of chapter 4. I wonder what might happen next. Stay tuned to chapter 5. Hope you're enjoying I Survived the Great Chicago Fire.